Hey everyone, my name is Vanessa Smith and I'm the designer behind knit-rhapsody designs. This is my very first YouTube video, so I hope that you enjoy watching and are able to learn something today. In this video, I'm going to discuss the figure 8 cast-on, which is usually used for toe-up socks. But in two of my recent sweater designs, which I will link to, I've gone ahead and used it as a sort of provisional cast-on at the center back neck to create a continuous collar. So if you'd like to see how this cast-on is done, just stay tuned. Okay, so all you're going to need is a 32-inch long or longer circular needle. And if you're doing two at a time toe-up socks, you're going to want at least a 47-inch cord. Pretty much for this cast-on, the longer the cord, the better. And the cable should also be very flexible. So the first step is simply to tie a slip knot. You're just going to want to leave a 6 to 8-inch tail, just long enough to weave in the end when you finish your project. And place that slip knot on the needle tip and pull it snug. And then you're going to just take that tail and tuck it away in your left hand to keep it out of your way while you work the cast on. So take the second needle tip and hold it parallel to the first, and the slip knot should be on the top needle. And pull that bottom needle tip out to the right so that you're holding one needle tip and one cord in your left hand. And basically keep in mind that the slip knot in this cast on does not count as a stitch. It's simply to anchor the working yarn while you work the cast on. And then the figure 8 cast on is basically a two-step process. So the first step is to bring the working yarn under and then over the cable, and then over and under the needle tip. And that's just the two steps you repeat over and over again. And while you're working this cast on, make sure that you pull the yarn snug so that it pulls the needle tip and the cable close together. So each figure 8 motion creates 2 stitches, one on the cable and one on the needle. And again, do not count the slip knot as a stitch. So when you've reached the appropriate number of stitches that you need for your cast on, make sure you count them to make sure that you have the right number. And then you're just going to leave the working yarn hanging down in between the needle and the cable there. So now you're going to pull the needle tip out to the right just to kind of give it more slack, and make sure that working yarn is coming from under and then over the cable. And you're going to knit across the first set of stitches as you normally would knit. And as you're working this, make sure you try to keep the yarn as snug as possible. Also, you're going to need to pull the cord every once in a while because there can be a lot of slack here in the center. Pull that snug again. Just keep knitting to the very end of the row there. Now when you come to the slip knot, you can just drop it and pull it out. You don't need it anymore. But make sure that working yarn, or that tail end, is hanging down in front of the cord as shown. And then carefully turn your work so that the cable is on the top and the needle is on the bottom. And then slide the bottom needle out, or the top needle, into the stitches that still need to be worked. And then that tail end that you had left hanging there, you can just drop it. And again, make sure that the working yarn is now coming from under and then over the cable. And for this set of stitches only, you're going to need to knit through the back of loops of the stitches because they are twisted from the cast on. So knit this row through the back loops. And again, try to keep it as snug as possible because your stitches will be loose at the center of your cast on if you don't. And just continue to the very end there. And then you can pull that tail end snug again just to kind of tighten things up a little bit. So this is pretty much your cast on. Just make sure you count and double check to make sure you didn't lose any stitches, because this cast on is very easy to lose stitches. So just make sure that you have the right number. And if you were to continue knitting in the round, that would make your toe box for toe-up socks. You can also knit back and forth as in a U shape for the top of a hood or a child's bonnet. But in the way that I used it, I put the first set of stitches worked on a stitch holder, and then I continued working from the needle tip outward. Then I put those stitches on a stitch holder, and then I picked up the stitches off the holder and worked in the opposite direction in the same way, and that became my back collar band. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you the toe. Alright, so here's the finished toe box for this sample, and your pattern that you are following should tell you how many stitches to increase to. And here's the cast on from the inside, and as you can see it's a little loose, but if you were to do it properly it'll be nice and snug and seamless, pretty invisible. Here it is from the right side. And there you have it. There's the toe for a toe-up sock. And as you can see, this cast on is very useful for a variety of things. As I mentioned, for the top of a hood or the back of a neckband. It's very cool. So if you liked this video, please rate it and subscribe to my channel. And also please feel free to give me any suggestions for future videos. I would love to hear them and consider them for the future. Thanks for watching.